Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Biblical Unlocks. This show is designed to help build your habit of reading the Bible, understanding the Bible, and applying it in your daily life, as studies routinely show that those who read their Bibles regularly have significantly lower symptoms of depression, anxiety, and anger, whilst also having higher feelings of compassion, forgiveness, and a sense of purpose in their lives. So if you enjoy episodes like this, please consider following and rating the show. It's free, it helps me out a lot, and you can always change your mind later. And today we're going to be going through Leviticus chapter 22, which is essentially going to set the foundational rules which govern who may touch and eat what is holy and what animals are going to be acceptable for sacrifice. This evidently is going to protect the sanctity of the sacred gifts, the portions of the sacrifices reserved for the priests and for God, and it prohibits anyone who is ceremonially unclean or blemished from eating holy food. And this requires that sacrificial animals be without defect, and it also insists that foreigners may partake only when they are ceremonially clean. And this chapter is going to repeatedly insist that the holy must be treated with reverence because, once again, God is holy, God is set apart. So Leviticus 21's focus on priestly identity and bodily wholeness is going to be shifted here and focusing on from the person to the practice. Not only must priests be suitably ordered in life, but the offerings and the handling of those holy things must be carefully regulated. So without further ado, let's read verses 1 to 9. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Direct Aaron and his sons to deal carefully with the sacred donations of the Israelites, which they dedicate to me, so that they may not profane my holy name. I am the Lord. Say to them, if anyone among all your offspring throughout your generations comes near the sacred donations which the Israelites dedicate to the Lord, while he is in a state of uncleanness, that person shall be cut off from my presence. I am the Lord. No one of Aaron's offspring who has a defiling skin disease or suffers a discharge may eat of the sacred donations until he is clean. Whoever touches anything made unclean by a corpse or a man who has had an emission of semen, and whoever touches any swarming thing by which he may be made unclean, or any human being by whom he may be made unclean, whatever his uncleanness may be." Verse 6, "The person who touches any such shall be unclean until evening, and shall not eat of the sacred donations unless he has washed his body in water. When the sun sets he shall be clean, and afterwards he may eat of the sacred donations, for they are his food. That which died or was torn by wild animals he shall not eat, becoming unclean by it. I am the Lord. They shall keep my charge so that they may not incur guilt and die because of it, for having profaned them. I am the Lord, I sanctify them." Verse 10, "No lay person shall eat of the sacred donations, no bound or hired servant of the priest shall eat of the sacred donations, but if a priest acquires anyone by purchase, the person may eat of them, and those who are born in his house may eat of his food. If a priest's daughter marries a layman, she shall not eat of the offering of the sacred donations, but if a priest's daughter is widowed or divorced, without offspring, and returns to her father's house as in her youth, she may eat of her father's food. No layperson shall eat of it. If a man eats of the sacred donation unintentionally, he shall add 1/5 of its value to it, and give the sacred donation to the priest. No one shall profane the sacred donations of the Israelites, which they offer to the Lord, causing them to bear guilt, requiring a guilt offering by eating their sacred donations, for I am the Lord, I sanctify them." Okay, verses 70 to 25 is going to focus on the qualities of sacrificial animals. Verse 17, "The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to Aaron and his sons and all the Israelites, and say to them, when anyone of the house of Israel or of the aliens residing in Israel presents an offering, whether in payment of a vow or as a free will offering that is offered to the Lord as a burnt offering, to be acceptable on your behalf, it shall be a male without blemish, of the cattle or the sheep or the goats. You shall not offer anything that has blemish, for it will not be acceptable on your behalf. When anyone offers a sacrifice of well-being to the Lord, in fulfillment of a vow or as a free will offering from the herd or from the flock, to be acceptable, it must be perfect. There shall be no blemish in it. Anything blind or injured or maimed or having a discharge or an itch or scabs, these you shall not offer to the Lord, or put any of them on the altar as offerings by fire to the Lord. Verse 23, an ox or a lamb that is deformed or stunted you may present for a free will offering, but it will not be accepted for a vow. Any animal that has its testicles bruised or crushed or torn or cut, you shall not offer to the Lord. Such you shall not do within your land, nor shall you accept any animals from a foreigner to offer as food to your God, since they are mutilated with a blemish in them. They shall not be accepted on your behalf. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, when an ox or a sheep or a goat is born, it shall remain 7 days with its mother, and from the 8th day on it shall be acceptable as the Lord's offering by fire. But you shall not slaughter from the herd or the flock an animal with its young on the same day. When you sacrifice a thanksgiving offering to the Lord, you shall sacrifice it so that it may be acceptable on your behalf. It shall be eaten on the same day. You shall not leave any of it until morning. I am the Lord. Verse 31, thus you shall keep my commandments and observe them. I am the Lord. You shall not profane my holy name, that I may be sanctified among the Israelites. I am the Lord. I sanctify you. I who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am the Lord. Okay, time for some deep biblical unlocks. In verses 1 to 9, we saw that the Lord warns Aaron and his sons not to profane the holy gifts by allowing a defiled person to eat them. If a priest becomes ceremonially unclean, such as by touching a corpse, he must not eat holy food until he is purified. Priests must keep themselves distinct, and they must ensure only the ritually fit can partake in these sacrifices. What this means is sanctity and the priesthood. These priests have a sanctity as custodians, and the priesthood is a stewardship. That is to say, they guard access to what mediates God's presence. And purity is relational and contagious. What one touches can transfer defilement, and the whole community must be protected. From verses 10 to 16, if a priest or a lay person is unclean, or if a gift or an animal is blemished, they may not eat the Lord's portion. A priest with a physical defect may not perform the offerings, but may still eat from the holy food in some cases, and those who cheat or lie to get holy things are completely cut off. If a priest is guilty of profaning the holy, corrective procedures, including the offering and a guilt offering, are given. So what this means is moral integrity matters as much as ritual form. Hypocrisy, such as claiming holiness whilst you live in corruption, is serious. And holiness also includes justice, that is, stealing or deceit disqualifies someone from enjoying God's provision. In verses 17 to 25, we saw what constitutes an acceptable sacrifice. Animals presented to the Lord for vows, free will offerings, or other sacred purposes must be free from blemish. If an animal is defective, it may not be offered as a sacred gift. In some cases, it may be eaten by the priest as ordinary meat, only after judicial substitution, and the people must bring their best, not scraps or injured animals. What's the deeper meaning here? Remember that these sacrifices are placed in atonement for one's sin. Sometimes there are free will offerings, sometimes there are offerings of thanksgiving, and there are also guilt offerings, offerings that account for someone's sin. And the only way that you can substitute for someone's sin is by giving an offering free from blemish. This is exactly what we see with Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ was the guilt offering, the burnt offering that was offered in place of our sin, a perfect lamb without blemish, blemish being sin, right? So if someone has committed a crime, let's say someone has committed a crime, right? The person who would have to substitute for that crime would be a person who has not committed a crime at all. So, for example, if you steal a television worth $1,000, a person who would have to pay that penalty would be a person who has not stolen a TV, not in debt to the government. And that is exactly what we're seeing here. A person who has committed sins cannot pay the penalty for someone else's sins, as someone would have to pay for his sins penalty, or the penalty for his sins, which is why Jesus Christ needed to live a perfect life without sin, so that he can pay the penalty of sin for all of us. And by doing so, he is the Lamb without blemish, who was sacrificed for all human beings across all times, places, and cultures, so that we may live. In verses 26 to 33, if a foreign resident or hired servant wants to eat holy things, they may do so provided that they are ceremonially clean. And the chapter closes with this central theological claim: the Lord has made Israel holy, and they must keep his statutes, because he is their sanctifier and redeemer. So holiness invites, but only on God's terms. The community is not exclusionary, that is, it is not particular to this set of people for selfish reasons. Access is possible, but holiness and the order of approach are required. This is the most important theme throughout throughout Leviticus. That is, God is holy, and the only way you can get in the presence of a holy God is by performing these ritualistic procedures that remove your guilt, your sin, so that you may be in the presence of the one true God. The identity of the community is covenantal. That is, God shapes Israel by giving them rules that form holy living. And this covenant must be established by obedience through and to these rules that allow the holy nation to be in the presence of a holy God. So, how can we understand this in our own daily lives? Well, the first thing would be that holiness is both inward and practical. You can't compartmentalize secret sin and expect to partake in God's provision without repair, right? Custodianship matters. If you lead or steward sacred things such as time, ministry, and influence, you need to guard what touches them, and you need to offer your best. That is, God is not honored by leftovers or deceit. You need to give sacrificially and visibly. You need to restore publicly, and restoration normally includes confession, guarded reintegration, accountability, so that the entire community's trust is rebuilt. And the truth is here, Christ fulfills and empowers all that we see in Leviticus. Jesus is the perfect priest who makes us truly clean. Yet the practical discipline Leviticus requires, that is, the removal of defilement, honest confession, sacrificial giving, these remain powerful tools that the Spirit uses to form holiness in our lives. So don't give the Lord your leftovers. And we know exactly what this means, right? Like when you are not willing to give your all for God, you're not going all in, you're sort of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Well, we know what happened when you only have 1 foot in the kingdom of heaven and 1 foot in the world. Ask the church of Laodicea, Revelation chapter 3 verses 10 onwards. It says that he will spit you out because you are lukewarm. That's a very drastic and visual image, but it shows that we need to be all in for God. We can't be on the fence because, as we all know, the devil owns the fence. So that's it for this episode of Biblical Unlocks. This show is designed to help you keep up your habit of reading the Bible, understanding the Bible, and applying it in your daily life. I upload daily, so if you don't want to miss tomorrow's episode, feel free to rate the show and follow. Otherwise, just have a blessed day. And always remember, if you're not in your word, you're in your feelings. Godspeed.